I always thought routine was my safeguard until the evening my doctor knocked on my front door carrying more than his usual black sacca. It was a mild Thursday in late spring, the kind of day that makes the streets shimmer with new leaves, and reminds the city to breathe slower. I had spent it the same way I'd spent most days since the accident, perched on my grandmother's faded velvet couch, foot propped on pillows, pretending paperwork could fill the silence. The living room smelled faintly of citrus polish and the cinnamon candle I lit whenever loneliness tiptoed too close. The oak-framed mirror across from me caught a restless version of myself, hair a little unkempt, eyes a shade more thoughtful since the fall. Dr. Marcus Reveremicus, when we were off the record, had been making house calls ever since I sprained my ankle 3 weeks ago during an ill-advised charity softball game. Technically, I could hobble to his clinic by now, but he insisted on these visits professional courtesy, he claimed. I pretended not to notice how eagerly I agreed. Our history ran deeper than patient and physician. 2 years earlier I'd designed the website for his practice, and somewhere between late-night email tweaks and celebratory takeout, friendship settled in. He knew my favorite coffee roast. I knew he hummed jazz standards when focused. What he didn't know, what I guarded like a secret photograph in a novel, was the warmth I felt each time his fingers brushed mine while fastening a blood pressure cuff. Tonight's visit carried a different weight. Tomorrow he was leaving for a medical conference in Vancouver, 5 days and a border away from my carefully contained world. 5 days for the spell of his presence to weaken, or for my heart to realize how much it depended on it. I'd been rehearsing casual goodbyes all afternoon, each one crumbling before reaching my tongue. The doorbell chimed its off-key note. I smoothed invisible wrinkles from my shorts, as though any crease mattered to a man who had stitched emergency wounds at dawn. When I opened the door, Marcus stood there in navy scrubs, stethoscope coiled like a silver question mark around his neck. The evening sun tipped his hair in gold and glinted off the light perspiration at his temples, the price of climbing my 3 flights of stairs. Still upright, he teased, eyes sweeping from my face to the crutches leaning behind me, defying gravity. 1 hop at a time, I said, stepping aside. The warmth in my chest was sudden, familiar. He set his satchel on the coffee table, glancing at the scattered grant proposals I'd tried to skim. I see cabin fever has you reorganizing your entire life. Distraction therapy works wonders, I answered, though every distraction dissolved the moment he entered the room. Marcus's presence changed the air, made it denser somehow, charged like an overwound clock. He pulled on nitrile gloves, the snap echoing in the quiet. Let's take a look. As he knelt, his shoulder brushed my knee. The touch was clinical, accidental, and it jolted me nonetheless. I studied the soft crease at the corner of his mouth, the concentration in his dark eyes, the faint cedar scent of his soap. My pulse fluttered traitorously loud in my ears. He looked up, perhaps sensing the shift, and for a heartbeat we both forgot the script. His gaze lingered a fraction longer than necessary, an unspoken sentence hanging between us like dust motes. In slanted light, tomorrow he would be gone. Tonight, for the span of this house call, everything felt possibly and unbearably fragile. Asterisk, I met Marcus 2 summers ago, though it already feels like he's been a fixture in my life longer than that. At the time, he'd just opened his small practice in the neighborhood, and I was freelancing as a UX designer, living off coffee and deadlines. He was all ambition and quiet, charisma, precise in his words, generous with his time. He'd reached out to me through a mutual friend about redesigning his website. Something clean, he'd said. Professional but warm. Like someone's inviting you in. That was the thing about Marcus, he made even technical conversations feel personal. The first time we met to talk design, we ended up sitting at a cafe for hours, barely touching our drinks as we debated everything from typography to patient trust. At some point he'd laughed at one of my sarcastic jabs, and I remember thinking how rare it was to meet someone who could hold both intelligence and softness in the same breath. From there, the friendship grew in comfortable, unhurried ways. Late-night texts about font pairings turned into check-ins about weekend plans. He helped me move a bookshelf I stubbornly tried to haul alone. I showed up with soup when he caught the flu last winter. He never missed a chance to call me out when I spiraled into workaholic tendencies, and I, in return, teased him for his overuse of bullet journals and post-its. Your planner has more tabs than a law library, I told him once, watching him color-code his week on my couch. And yet I still show up with your cartado, just how you like it. He'd replied with that maddening half-smile. There was an ease to us, but also something beneath it, something I wasn't quite brave enough to name. Maybe it was in the way his hand would rest briefly on my shoulder when saying goodbye, or the way I'd find myself watching him when he wasn't looking, memorizing the slope of his jaw, the way he bit the inside of his cheek when thinking. Tonight, after checking the wrap on my ankle, Marcus leaned back against the side of the couch, his knees almost brushing mine. The gap between us felt smaller than usual. "You should really ice this more than you are," he said. "Moxton." "I do," I lied. He arched a brow. "The ice pack in your freezer has frostbite." I smirked. "What can I say? It's waiting for the right moment." He laughed, that low, grounding sound I'd come to anticipate like clockwork. And then, as his smile faded, he looked around my living room at the cozy clutter, the uneven stack of books on the coffee table, the candle flickering low beside the window. "You ever think about getting out of the city?" he asked suddenly. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I think I'd miss the chaos. The noise keeps me company." Marcus nodded. "I get that, though, ... A break doesn't sound so bad either." His words hung in the air for a brief second. We were both quiet. Outside, the street lamps buzzed to life, casting long amber shadows across the floor. It was then that the moment our easy rhythm was interrupted. The power flickered twice, then died with a dull hum. Darkness swallowed the room, followed by silence. We sat frozen in place, the glow of my phone screen the only light between us. "Well," I said, "that's dramatic timing. Do you have any candles?" Marcus asked, already rising and navigating the room with surprising confidence. "Drawer by the sink," I said, voice softer than I meant. He returned moments later with a candle and a lighter, striking the flame in the dark. The match's glow illuminated his face-sharp cheekbones, the glint in his eyes, the faint line between his brows when he concentrated. As he placed the candle on the coffee table, our eyes met in the low flicker. Something shifted, or maybe it had always been there, waiting for quiet. "It might be out for a while," he murmured. "Transformer issues on this block happen more often than they should." I nodded, suddenly aware of how still the world felt without electricity humming in the background. No refrigerator buzz, no soft whir of the fan, just his breath. And mine. Then came the complication. "My phone's nearly dead," he said, checking his screen. "I might need to crash here for a bit if the outage drags." I looked at him, trying not to let too much hope show on my face. "You know you're always welcome," he smiled gently, running a hand through his hair. "I'll just grab the blanket from your chair and take the floor." "You're not sleeping on the floor," I said, already shifting the pillows. "The couch pulls out. Is that your idea of hospitality, or are you just trying to keep me close?" He meant it as a joke, but something in his voice, something quieter, made my pulse skip. I didn't answer, couldn't, not right away. Instead, I unfolded the pull-out bed, my hands shaking more than they should have. He noticed, but didn't say anything, just watched me in that way. He sometimes did, like he was trying to read a page I wasn't ready to hand over. And as he moved past me to help with the sheets, his fingers brushed mine again. This time, they didn't pull away, and neither did I. Marcus and I wrestled the last fitted sheet into place, the candle's stubby flame flickering between us like a heartbeat. My ankle throbbed from the activity, but the ache was distant compared to the awareness of his nearness, the brush of his forearm when we smoothed wrinkles, the warmth of his breath when he leaned closer to tuck a corner. "Bed-making, underrated cardio," he joked, half out of breath. He straightened, fingers finding the bridge of his nose in that small, thoughtful gesture I'd catalogued 100 times. "Next time I'll bill you for the workout," replied, surprised by the husk in my own voice. He smiled, then glanced at the glowing screen of his phone. Battery icon, crimson sliver. "Signal's gone too," he murmured. "Cell towers must be down. No conference emails, no weather updates, no quick escape." His shoulders relaxed in resignation, as if the city itself had conspired to trap us in this pocket of candlelit quiet. "How tragic," I deadpanned. My pulse contradicted the sarcasm, skittering like a trapped moth. He folded his scrub top into a makeshift pillow, revealing the charcoal gray t-shirt underneath, sleeves tight against his triceps. "Mind if I grab a quick shower? Been running non-stop since 7. Bathrooms at the end of the hall, towels in the cabinet." I tried to sound casual, ignoring the sudden flush in my cheeks. The idea of him in my shower water tracing the line of his neck was a mental image both delicious and dangerous. I turned away, pretending to fuss with throw pillows. Minutes later, the bathroom door clicked shut, pipes rattled, water rushed. With the electricity out, the apartment's silence felt cavernous, every sound amplified. My thoughts spiraled. "He's here, in your space, wearing your shampoo. Should you say something tonight?" But what if it wrecks everything? I busied myself gathering tea lights from drawers, lighting each until soft halos dotted the room when Marcus emerged, hair damp and dark. The faint scent of cedar and mint drifted ahead of him. He'd traded scrubs for joggers he kept in his satchel, but the t-shirt remained, clinging slightly from steam. "Your water pressure is a dream," he said, rubbing a towel over his head. A drop slid along his temple. Instinctively, I reached up and brushed it away with my thumb, skin on skin. We both froze, my hand lingering a fraction too long before retreating. "Thanks," I whispered, throat tight. He blinked, as if recalibrating, then gestured to the candle constellation. "Creating ambient, emergency interior design," I joked, though my voice quivered. We settled onto the pullout, sitting cross-legged at opposite corners like two kids at a sleepover that had drifted past midnight. The mattress bowed toward the center, funneling us closer. Marcus noticed first. "Gravity's plotting," he said, scooting back only to slide forward again. We laughed, but neither attempted a real retreat. To pass time, he pulled a paperback from his bag, some medical memoir he'd been reading between patients. He offered to read aloud, voice low and measured. I listened, head propped on my hand, studying how candlelight gilded the curve of his lips on certain words. When he paused to turn a page, our eyes met. Something unspoken pulsed their curiosity, maybe hope. It jolted through me with equal parts longing and fear. I broke the gaze first, throats dry. "Want something to drink?" I wouldn't say no. The kitchen was black as pitch. I hobbled across tile, balancing on good foot, groping for the kettle, then remembered the stove's electric ignition was useless. Marcus appeared behind me with a flashlight from his medkit, beam slicing the dark. He set it on its end, light blooming upward in a soft cone. "We could share the rest of this," he said, lifting my half-finished mug from earlier. Room temperature, coffee, gourmet. Our fingers overlapped on the handle. Static buzzed up my arm. He must have felt it too. His breath hitched. "Go ahead," I murmured. "Doctor's orders." "Nah, let's split it." He tipped the mug to my lips first, steadying it with two hands. The gesture, simple, intimated the room tilt. Warm bitterness slid across my tongue. Gratitude, sweeter still, filled my chest. When I lowered the mug, we were a scant foot apart. "Your pupils are dilated," he said softly, teasing professionalism, slipping into something else. Sighed. "Effect of caffeine deprivation," I countered. He studied me a beat longer than medically necessary, then took his sippies, never leaving mine. The candle in the corner guttered, shadows shifting over his face, like the room itself held its breath. Back on the mattress, the sagging center drew us shoulder to shoulder. My heart raced at the contact, his arm brushing mine, thigh warm. Beside my jeans, the city outside felt miles away, its distant sirens muted. Only our shared inhale exhale existed. He reopened the book but didn't read. Instead, he drummed fingers against the cover, as though weighing a choice. Finally, he spoke. "Can I ask something personal?" "Sure. Back when you built the site, you'd stay up till to tweaking code. No one else would notice." "Why?" I shrugged, picking at a loose thread in the quilt. "Because details matter. Because your work deserves it." His smile softened. "You've always taken care of people, even when it costs you sleep." The compliment warmed me, but also stung, reminding me how unseen I felt by others and how sharply he, of all people, noticed. "Sometimes I wonder," I admitted, heat rising to my cheeks, "if I pour energy into projects so I don't have to look at what's missing." Marcus's brow knit with concern. "What feels missing?" "You," my mind screamed. Instead I deflected, hard to say in the dark. He reached for the flashlight, angled it upward so a pool of glow haloed us beneath the sheet fort of the quilt. "Better," he whispered. We were face to face, inches apart. His gaze lowered to my mouth, returned to my eyes. My breath snagged, the air thick with possibility. One tilt forward and everything would change. I found my courage, then promptly lost it. Fear skittered through me. He's leaving tomorrow. What if this is loneliness speaking? What if confessing ruins the effortless equilibrium we've nurtured? I leaned back an inch, the mattress protesting with a metallic creak. Marcus's expression shuddered just faintly, like a door not fully closed. He rubbed his palms together, searching for safe ground. "Your ankle," he said suddenly, professional mode re-engaged. "We should elevate it." I sighed at the reprieve and the disappointment tangled inside it. "Okay." He guided a pillow under my calf, hands gentle yet sure. His thumbs brushed skin above the wrap, tracing a question he didn't voice. My nerves lit up in response. He lingered, almost imperceptibly, before withdrawing. "Better?" he asked. "Yeah, thanks." My gratitude sounded ragged. Another silence unfurled, not awkward, but taut, vibrating with the things neither of us dared say. I stared at the ceiling, mind racing. Tell him how the world brightens when he walks in, how even pain feels lighter in his presence. Tell him you replay every text, every laugh like a favorite song. Beside me, he exhaled slowly, as if running parallel calculations. Then, with delicate certainty, he shifted so his shoulder pressed lightly against mine. Not accidental this time. I could feel the steady cadence of his breathing, the rise and fall sinking to my own. Neither of us spoke, yet the choice was clear. Stay in this charged hush or step across it. My chest tightened around the realization that we were both hovering. Two irrevocable words, I feel, poised on our tongues. In the dim glow, Marcus's hand settled between us, palm up, fingers relaxed in silent invitation. A bridge half built, my pulse hammered. I curled my own hand into his, the contact sparking through every nerve. He clasped gently, thumb brushing slow arcs across my knuckles, tiny, burning circles of patience. The simplest touch, yet it felt like the last lock surrendering on a long-guarded door. I didn't speak, I didn't have to. In that hush of blackout stillness, the distance between wanting and having collapsed to the width of our joined hands, and the world narrowed to candlelight, cedar mint warmth, and a single truth pulsing louder than fear. This is where I want to stay. Silence pressed in, warm, humming, alive. Marcus's fingers wove loosely through mine on the sagging pull-out mattress, candlelight shivering across the walls like a slow pulse. In the hush I felt every point of contact, the callus at the base of his thumb, the faint tremor in my own knuckles, the steady heat radiating from his skin into mine. Minutes stretched elastic. I kept expecting one of us to cough, to laugh it off, to shift away, but neither of us moved. Outside, the city was a blackout silhouette, windows dark and street lamps dead. No sirens, no traffic. Even time seemed stalled, waiting to see if we'd finally say the thing we'd both been circling for months. My heart pounded so loudly, I was sure he could feel it through our joined hands. Say it, my mind urged. He's here, his hand in yours. What else are you waiting for? But another voice, trained in caution, in keeping friendships intact, whispered fear. If I stepped over the line and found nothing on the other side, I would lose not just the glances and the laughter, but the safe harbor his presence had become. Marcus exhaled, the sound soft but seismic in the quiet. There's something I should tell you, he said, voice a shade lower than usual. The tremor in his words startled me. He was the man who could deliver a grave diagnosis with calm reassurance. Hearing uncertainty from him sent a warm ache through my chest. I swallowed. Okay, a beat. He withdrew his hand, slow, reluctant, and sat cross-legged facing me. In the lantern glow, his eyes looked almost black, reflecting every flicker. He ran a palm over his jaw, buying time. I mirrored him unconsciously, shifting upright, hugging a pillow to anchor myself. I've been debating whether it's fair to bring this up tonight, he began. Given the circumstances, given that I'm technically your physician though, only for another week until the ankle clears, a faint self-deprecating smile. But the power's out, and you can't exactly shove me into the hallway to avoid awkward conversations. I huffed a nervous laugh. I could try, but the crutches slow me down. His shoulders loosened a fraction. Right. He inhaled, held it, then released. When I started these house calls, they were about your recovery. That was the point. Somewhere along the way, his gaze flicked to the tangled sheet between us. They turned into the best part of my day. Blood roared in my ears. Marcus, he lifted a hand. Let me get this out before I lose my nerve. I tell myself it's just friendship, that I'm grateful for someone who understands my workaholic nonsense and still answers text messages at midnight. But the truth is, I look for excuses to come by. I rehearse jokes in the elevator so I can make you laugh. His voice cracked. I think about how your apartment smells like cinnamon wax melts, and how you tilt your head when you're focused, and how you drink coffee that would dissolve enamel but still manage to sleep. A shaky breath escaped me, half laugh, half sob. He was cataloging the details I'd hoped were invisible. My throat tightened around words I'd practiced alone in the shower, never intending to speak. If that crosses lines, tell me, he continued, fingers worrying the seam of his joggers. I'll respect whatever boundary you need. Just before I leave tomorrow, I wanted you to know. He stopped, swallowing hard, gaze pinned to a shadow on the wall. Vulnerability poured off him in waves, so unlike his usual composure that it left me breathless. I reached forward, placing my hand over his fidgeting one. I thought I was the only one, I managed, voice thin with emotion. His head snapped toward me, hope flaring bright and raw. You did. All this time, I said, tears threatening. Every knock on my door felt like a stolen gift. I kept counting down to the day you'd clear me to walk and stop coming, because that's what should happen, and I hated that. Needed the injury to keep you close. He blinked rapidly, absorbing each word like oxygen. I never stopped because I worried you'd overexert yourself, but also because leaving felt wrong. He gave a strangled laugh. Clinical justification. For personal motives. I squeezed his hand. I'm not your patient forever. There's no rule saying we can't. I faltered, cheeks blazing. See where this goes. Relief and wonder rippled across his face, followed quickly by something darkered out. What if we're reading the room wrong? What if this is just proximity, adrenaline, blackout romance? He gestured at the darkness beyond the windows. Tomorrow the lights come back and you realize you were starved for company, not me. I shook my head, words trembling out. Do you know how many times I've sat at my computer scrolling our chat thread just to reread the dumb pun you sent about antihistamines? How often I've imagined telling you that every font choice I made for your site was secretly about framing your name the way it deserves. He let out a breathy laugh, eyes glistening. You're going to make me fall harder, you realize? Maybe let yourself, I whispered. I'm already there. Emotion tightened his features. He bit his lower lip in uncharacteristically vulnerable gesture and scooted closer until our knees touched. I have no idea how to do this, he admitted. I'm used to guidelines, standard of care checklists. There's no protocol for falling for your web designer. We improvise, I murmured. My heart pounded so loud I could feel it in my gums, but certainty had settled into my bones like warm sun. Step 1. Admit feelings. I squeezed his hand. Done. Step 2. His voice was nearly a whisper. Ask the other person. If you can kiss them, I said, surprising myself. My pulse roared, but I held his gaze, refusing to hide. Marcus's lips parted, wonder and nerves warring across his expression. May I kiss you? Time crystallized. Every shimmer of candlelight, every creak from the building's ancient pipes, every skip in my heartbeat etched itself into memory. Yes, I breathed. He raised a trembling hand, cupping my cheek with the gentleness of someone handling heirloom glass. The heel of his palm was warm. His thumb brushed the ridge beneath my eye. I leaned into the touch instinctively, eyes fluttering closed. For a moment he simply held me there, our breaths mingling, shared clouds in the dim. Then his lips met mine, soft, tentative, reverent. I exhaled into the kiss, fingers finding the back of his neck, marveling at the contrast of stubble against my skin. The world fell away. No conference schedule, no healing ankle, no unspoken rules, just the quiet press of mouths learning each other, fitting together like long-missed halves. His hand slid to my jaw, angling me closer. Mine curled into the fabric of his shirt, anchoring. We parted barely an inch, foreheads resting together. He laughed, a quiet, disbelieving sound that vibrated through me. It feels like illegal. Levels of good, he whispered. I grinned, cheeks aching. We might need to regulate it. He kissed the corner of my mouth again, tender and quick, as if to test reality. I'm terrified, he confessed softly. Not of this, of losing it. Me too, I said. But I'm more afraid of pretending it's not real. His eyes searched mine, shining in the candlelight. Will you let me take you to dinner? When I'm back from Vancouver? Somewhere with terrible lighting but impeccable garlic bread, I chuckled. That sounds like step 3. He rested his forehead against mine, breath warm. I don't want tonight to be an isolated chapter. I want sequels. Then we'll write them, I promised, pressing our joined hands to my chest so he could feel my pulse stuttering against his knuckles. He closed his eyes at the sensation. You realize this is going to make the conference unbearable. 5 days of imagining garlic bread and wondering if you're okay on your ankle. I'll text hourly sponge cake memes to distract you, I offered. He laughed, pure and unguarded. Perfect. That should get me kicked out of at least one keynote. The candle guttered low, throwing the room into deeper amber. Marcus shifted, easing me back against pillows so we lay side by side on the narrow mattress. He draped an arm around me, tentative at first, then firmer when I snuggled closer. The smell of cedar mint shampoo mingled with beeswax and my cinnamon candle, an alchemy that felt uniquely ours. I rested a hand over his where it curved around my waist. Marcus at ham tomorrow morning, when the lights are on and the elevator's working. Promise we won't pretend this was a blackout fantasy. He kissed my hair, grounding and sure. I swear. Consider it notarized. A gentle hush settled. My ankle throbbed less under the pillow's elevation. My heart, once frantic, now beat with lucid calm. The fear wasn't gone, it never fully goes, but it had been eclipsed by something braver. Hope, illuminated in candlelight and sealed by a first kiss. As sleep drifted close, I realized the power outage hadn't trapped us. It had freed us, stripping away the fluorescent glare of routine until only the essential remained, 2 hands meeting in the dark, daring to hold on when the lights returned. I woke just after dawn to the faint click of dishes, the mattress beside me empty but still warm. For one disorienting second I wondered if I'd dreamed the blackout. The confession, the kiss until the scent of fresh coffee drifted in from the kitchen and a quiet hum of jazz floated after it. Marcus, I found him barefoot, hair a sleepy mess, rummaging in my cramped cupboards like a man on a treasure hunt. The power was still out, but he'd lit 3 tea lights on the counter and propped the flashlight in a cereal bowl for extra glow. A camp stove kettle dusty from a forgotten hiking phase whistled softly on the gas flame. "Morning, patient 0, he said, turning with 2 mugs. "Managed to locate beans that expired only last month. Gourmet by apocalypse standards." I grinned, leaning on my crutch in the doorway. "You realize you're setting a dangerous precedent. House calls, sheet fort, book readings, now emergency. Barista services." He handed me a mug, fingers wrapping briefly around mine. "Hazard of caring too much. Caffeine with a side of feelings. Doctor's orders." He lifted an eyebrow. "Precisely." We migrated to the sofa because the pullout had eaten one of my crutches in the night. Marcus perched on the armrest, close enough that his knee brushed my shoulder. Sunlight, thin but steady, seeped through the blinds. It made the candle stubs look like afterthoughts, but neither of us moved to blow them out. For a moment we just sipped and watched dust motes spin to people inhabiting the same hush but no longer afraid of it. "So," he said eventually, swirling his coffee, "real-life resume check. I catch a flight at 4. You have PT at 11. If the clinic has power, and we," he drew a lazy circle in the air between us, "have whatever this is." I set my mug down, tucking 1 foot beneath me. "An exciting new trial run. Minimal side effects reported, except elevated heart rate when you walk into a room." Noted. He reached out and traced the curve of my ankle brace. "How's the pain? Manageable?" I nudged his thigh with my toes. "You make a decent distraction." He smiled, then sobered. "Boundaries, though. I won't be your treating physician once you're cleared, which is in, what, a week? 8 days? Worst case?" He squeezed my shin gently. "Practically retirement." I laughed. "Then we can date without scandal." "Date," he repeated the word like a gift. "I would like that." A comfortable quiet followed. My gaze drifted to his hand-strong, deft, faint ink stain near the web of his thumb from yesterday's charting. Funny how details sharpen once you're allowed to adore them openly. "Can I ask something ridiculous?" I said. "Always. Why me? You see 100 people a week, most of them not limping or covered in code dust." He cocked his head, expression soft. "Because you listen harder than anyone I know. Because when you laugh, you tip forward like the joke might run away. Because you built me a website that makes anxious patients feel safe before they ever meet me, and you did it by asking how I wanted them to feel." He shrugged, embarrassed by his own fervor. "Also, you make terrible medical puns and pretend they're brilliant." I pressed a hand to my chest, theatrical. "My puns save lives." "Oh, absolutely," he agreed, eyes crinkling. "Countless." I reached for his coffee hand, lacing our fingers around the mug's warm ceramic. "Your turn. Ask me something." He considered. "What's the first thing you wanted to do after we kissed but didn't?" Heat bloomed up my neck. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "I wanted to kiss you again without the candle flicker hiding half your face." He set both mugs aside in one graceful motion and bent until our foreheads touched. In full morning light, I saw every fleck of hazel in his eyes, the faint scar near his eyebrow from med school basketball. He kissed me slow, deliberate, like a promise rather than a question. My hand slipped under the hem of his t-shirt to rest against the warm plane of his back, feeling the subtle shift of muscle as he breathed. When we parted, he stayed close, nose brushing mine. Better visibility. "Crystal clear," I whispered. We eventually reclaimed our coffees, sitting hip to hip, shoulders leaning like parentheses around the space we shared. Conversation meandered. Conference, gossip, my neglected coding project, whether garlic bread could be considered a food group. Each topic felt new because the context had changed. Subtext no longer needed translation. At one point he nudged my knee. 5 days isn't long, but it'll feel like forever. I poked his ribs. "I'll survive. Spreadsheet my exercises. Video call me at night. Bring me maple candy from the duty-free deal, he said. Then, softer, I'll miss you though. The vulnerability in those 4 words made my throat tighten. I'll miss you, too. He glanced at the dark TV, its blank screen reflecting our candlelit silhouettes. After the conference, let's do something ordinary. Grocery run, park walk, no medical charts in sight. With or without crutches. He tapped my brace. Without, if I've done my job, but I'll still hover occupational hazard accepted. A sudden thump echoed down the hallway. The refrigerator clicked to life, lights blinking on. Overhead, the city's hum returned in a rush traffic, distant horns, someone's TV across the courtyard. Our suspended world snapped back into motion. Marcus looked around, a wistful smile tugging at his mouth. Well, there goes our romantic blackout bubble. Good thing feelings have battery backup, I said. He laughed and pulled me in for one more quick kiss and hurried, certain, entirely lit by fluorescent reality. Text me when you get back from PT, he murmured against my lips. Proof of ankle function. Text me when you land, I countered. Proof of safe arrival. Deal. He rested his forehead against mine for a beat, then straightened, already checking flight times on his revived phone. I should head home, pack, maybe change into something less. Slept -in -on -a couch. I squeezed his hand. Doors open any time, preferably with power, but I'm flexible. He stood, then paused, looking down at me with a softness that made my chest ache. This wasn't a detour for me, he said quietly. It's the main road. I smiled so wide it felt like a sunrise. Then drive safe. Dr. Rivera, he winked, gathered his things, and kissed me once more at the door. Brief, sweet, a bookmark instead of a farewell. When the latch clicked shut behind him, the apartment felt bright, humming, impossibly hopeful. My foot still ached, my to-do list still loomed, but every ordinary thing shimmered with the knowledge that someone, somewhere above the clouds, was counting the hours until garlic bread and a second kiss, no blackout required. 8 days later I stood, brace-free, on the arrivals curb of the airport. Calf muscles humming from their first real workout since the accident. The sliding doors hissed, spilling travelers into the humid evening, and there threading through the crowd with a rolling carry-on was Marcus. His conference badge still dangled from his backpack like proof he'd survived the lectures. His eyes, tired but bright, locked on mine the moment he spotted me. I lifted the cardboard sign I'd made Dr. Garlic Bread Rivera and waved it. Like a ridiculous flag, he broke into a grin that crinkled the corners of his eyes, raised both hands in surrender, and hurried the last few steps. Our hug was swift but anchoring arms winding tight, his stubble brushing my temple, my heartbeat sinking to his in the suddenly hushed pocket we created amid honking taxis. You're standing, he breathed, as if the sight were both miracle and personal triumph. Mostly, I said, leaning back to show the butterfly bandage souvenir where the brace had rubbed raw skin. PT cleared me this morning. Pride flashed across his face, equal parts physician and partner. He bent, kissed the bandage with exaggerated delicacy, then straightened, cheeks flushed. Around us, no one cared, but the blatant tenderness felt like charting new territory in daylight. I laced our fingers and squeezed once. A silent yes, this is real. We drove straight to Cantina di Luca, a neighborhood hole in the wall that smelled of oregano and family secrets. The owner recognized Marcus from his clinic. You fixed my set, and seated us in a back booth under a tapestry of Tuscan hills. Candles flickered in squat jars. The vinyl seat stuck slightly to my bare kneesima, declaring itself. I'd worried the first official date might feel forced, but conversation slid into its old cadence. Conference mishaps, he'd spilled espresso on a keynote speaker's slides. My freelance chaos, a client wanted Comic Sans for relatability. Both of us laughing louder than table etiquette suggested. When the bread arrived, thick slices slick with butter, buried beneath a blizzard of garlic, we simultaneously reached for the same piece, fingers tangling in midair. Neither retreated. Instead we tore the slice in half, like conspirators dividing loot, each holding out a portion to the other. Akabo's antibody paradox, he quipped, reviving the worst pun of our late-night chats. I groaned, delighted. That joke was illegal then, it's still illegal now. Statute of limitations. Never, he declared, and we clinked crusts before biting into the meal. He grew quiet, swirling marinara with the heel of his fork. I've been thinking, he said, voice soft enough that accordion music from the speakers nearly swallowed it, about on-call nights, clinic hours, all the ways medicine steals time. I don't want you to feel like you're penciled between patients. I set my fork down, reaching across the tiny table until my fingers brushed the inside of his wrist. I'm not afraid of your calendar. Marcus. Just promise you won't use it as a wall. He flipped his hand palm up, same gesture as that blackout night hand threaded our fingers. Then let's build a door instead. His eyes lifted, earnest. I have Tuesdays off. That's non-negotiable garlic bread day now. And every other Sunday morning, I turn my phone off for 3 hours, starting this week. Heat swelled behind my ribs, gratitude, surprise, a sense of being chosen with intention. Deal, I whispered. In return, I delete work email from my phone after 10 p.m. so I actually sleep. He smiled, victorious, healthier already. The check arrived tucked in a tiny ceramic shoe. Marcus reached for his wallet. I slid mine out too. Our hands collided. We stared, then laughed at people adjusting to shared responsibility in real time. Split, he offered. Partners copay, I teased. We still paid half each, but the ritual mattered more than the numbers. Outside, dusk painted the sky in bruised lilac. The street lamps buzzed awake this time, blessedly, with full power. We strolled toward his car, my steps steady, his hand curved around my lower back in unconscious guidance. When we reached the passenger door, he paused, dug in his pocket, and pulled out something small, a keyring with a single silver key next to a miniature USB drive. I made copies, he said, suddenly shy. Office spare for emergencies. And that he tapped the USB is the newest backup of the clinic site, but I figured it belongs on my keychain now, where I see it every day. A practical gift that doubled as promise, trust, shared space, the blending of two separate orbits. My throat thickened. I slid the ring onto my own house keys, listening to the delicate chime as they settled together. Guess you're stuck with my cinnamon candles and a blackout. He brushed a curl from my forehead, fingertips lingering. Wouldn't have it any other way. Before climbing in, we stood on the quiet sidewalk, city sounds washing around us. I traced the tendons of his hand, remembering how scared we'd both been to cross this line. Now, under neon signage and evening breeze, the fear felt distant, like a hallway we'd walked through and left behind. You realize, I murmured, this isn't the happy ending, it's the first chapter break. He tipped his forehead to mine. Sequel in production. Series, I corrected, smiling against his lips. Long running, he kissed me and hurried, confident, tasting faintly of garlic and possibility. When we parted, headlights glittered on our joined hands. Step by step, we slid into the car and pulled into traffic, two silhouettes moving forward together, windows down, radio low. The road ahead was studded with streetlights and unknown detours, but every mile stretched wide open, humming with the same quiet certainty that had sparked to life in a dark apartment. This wasn't a detour at all. It was home, rolling steadily into view.